what are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz is us. Us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap, the truth about black wealth. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton, owner and founder of Hamilton Wealth Advisors. This is our 2022 wrap-up edition. It's been a lot going on in our community, in the United States of America, and just around the globe this year. It's been, we've had wars break out. We're coming out of pandemics. We've had inflation crisis. We've had market crisis. There's been a lot of things going on. We've had a lot of things going on within our own community as well. So we're going to touch on a lot of those different topics today. But of course, our goal is always to educate and enlighten and hopefully uplift, because our goal is to close the wealth gap within our own community first and foremost. So joined by some great brothers today. Of course, y'all know Brother Eddie Richardson, who's been a staple here, and of course leading our edition of
Pastor's Perspective.
Number one. We're going to keep that going because I feel that's vital to kind of what we're doing. I feel like that's one thing that's been lost, of course, along with our school system. Of course, them taking God out of the school, and we want to make sure that we put God back in the forefront of everything that we do. And that's why, first and foremost, I want to bring that perspective back and let you know that it can't just be about the money, but you got to be about God first, and God leads you to the money. Also, I got my brothers today, brother from another mother, financial advisor. He runs our Atlanta office of Hamilton Wealth Advisors. I want to thank you for joining us today, brother.
Absolutely.
So we're going to kick it off to him starting off, man. And, tell me, how are things going, man? What are you seeing right now in the marketplace?
Man, Atlanta has been a great market for the growth of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, to be honest with you. Coming in the middle of the pandemic, you would think not. You would think that, no, this is not the time to be, but it's the perfect time to meet with financial advisors. For me personally, my business has flourished over the last couple of years since the pandemic hit, for a couple of reasons. I personally believe because of, the pandemic hitting and people's finances being tremendously affected, they're taking time to say, okay, well, I got to look at this. I got to see how can I prevent, me being in this financial situation going forward. And then the other part of it was a lot of social injustices. So we started to look at how can I truly keep my dollar black. We are financial advisors that work for a black-owned wealth management company. We are not financial advisors that work for, your Edward Jones, your Charles Schwab's of the world. We are truly about uplifting our community, and I've seen just a change in demographic of the quality of clients I've been able to get to, which is obviously something that you always teaching me and showing me the ways to kind of navigate. It's been honestly fantastic, and I love that to be doubted a little bit going into the situation, and then exceeding expectations for a clientele, and then being able to have them want to be a champion for our company. To say, hey, I know this person, I know that person. And that organic growth is something that we've always been about. It brings authenticity to who we are as a company, our culture, and what we do. And it's been really good. We're in a unique time right now. Obviously, stuff is changing, but that don't change what we do. We obviously always want to plan for the worst and case scenarios and put our clients in the best situation. But Atlanta is great. I just see nothing but upward growth, to be honest with you, as we continue to gain some market share and build our network there as a company.
Oh yeah, well, I'm a firm believer. You take care of people, people take care of you. Treat people the way you want to be treated. One of the, greatest lessons I ever learned from my father is that, people don't want to know how much you know until they find out how much you care. So, we kind of put that in the forefront of everything we do. And, I'm one of those people that, of course, when you come into business in the corporate world, there's two things they tell you to stay away from. They say, don't talk politics and don't talk religion. Well, I'm not big into politics, but for me, my religion, my faith, it's who I am. So I don't believe in shying away from that. So I have to put, Christ first in everything that I do, because I ask him, of course, to lead me in my decisions with clients and helping me to put his will first. Not my will, but his will for them, and me being a conduit of change on their behalf. So, I don't know any other way around that, especially when, you're taking care of, most people's most prized possession, of course, is their finances. Yeah. This is their money. So I believe you need Christ in the midst of making sure that you're working on behalf of people and putting your best foot forward. So, with that being said, man, it's a lot going on right now. We've got Kanye, we've got Kyrie, we've got, Dion, we got Prime Time. And one thing that I saw this morning was a statement that University of Colorado put out. It's called the Prime Effect. And they were talking about since he officially announced taking over that job, their social media following has went up over 200,000 followers. Wow. They've had over 2,000 inquiries into season tickets. So just the money that he's already generated for that program, they've already estimated in paraphernalia sales and everything else, he's already generated double-digit millions of dollars for that institution. So, of course, we come back to, how we feel about that. Of course, there's, mixed opinions, on the topic. And, I myself went to a PWI, played football there. So, and of course, both of these gentlemen went to historically black college and university. So, I'm probably sitting on the wrong side of the fence when it comes to that. I may have made a mistake. And actually, when I look back at it, had I not been playing football, I definitely would have attended the HBCU. And actually, the way I look at things now, I wish I would have. Both my parents went to HBCUs. Most of my family went to HBCU. So I definitely understand the HBCU experience. And I've been blessed to have a unique perspective. Okay. Professionally, I've worked directly in close proximity with HBCUs, so I understand the challenges financially a lot greater than most. But also going to a PWI, I understand, the benefits that I received, the financial position that I was in just as an athlete being at that school compared to friends that I had at, HBCU. So, I want to kind of throw it to you as far as, how did the announcement of Coach Sanders hit you directly when it first happened?
First thing that came to mind was he ain't sweat. Just being honest, that's the first thing that came to mind was what Coach Eddie Robinson said, but not from the perspective of a diss that he's not sweat, but more so in the context of what Coach Robinson was saying was that these coaches that came before me that I'm standing on the shoulders of Coach Eddie Robinson, Marino Chasm, those were two of the names that Coach Robinson named. He was talking about the fact that those coaches stayed in there for the long haul. And that's the first thing I thought about was that, okay, Coach Prime, he's out, he's headed toward what his goal and purpose is. So I said, hey, he ain't sweat for that reason. That's what I thought about. Then I said, congratulations. He's living out his purpose, what he desired to do. We know before he took the job that the rumor and word that was out was that Coach Prime wanted to be at a Power 5 school, right? But he ended up coming to Jackson State. And that led me to the thought about how we're always here for our people. That no matter, like you said, you went to a PWI, I went to a HBCU. I don't look at you any different, just because of the school you went to, right? You're still my brother. We're still, in this race, in this fight for justice and equality together. For growth, for growth, right? So no matter where you went to school or whatever, we're still a part of this community together, right? And so that's what I thought about that. Once Coach Prime left, I was sad in a sense for what could have been a greater movement, right? And we can go there, but just dealing first response. He ain't swag. Congratulations for going. Hey, we still gonna support you and have your back because you're in this community. But then also begin to think about what could have been.
And I think that's what people were probably the most hurt about, especially people that in the HBCU community, is that we knew going in that, and I had a perspective where I feel like I don't think Coach Prime understood or knew the HBCU tradition, especially or the SWAC tradition, when he came into it. I think he came into it looking at it as an opportunity and as a job more so, and didn't understand the way that we were going to take it. Because if you come from HBCU, you understand the financial disparity and gap. You understand kind of some of the problems that exist to a certain extent. And when you see the possibility of change right before your eyes, I think that's the part that probably hurt us the most, because we saw a pathway upward. And now we feel like that pathway has kind of been taken away. But one thing that you said, and I thought about it, and I wondered, nobody asked this question. At that time when we had, the Eddie Robinsons, and I remember Coach Houston Markham back at Alabama State when I was growing up, and those guys extremely successful. Were they there because they couldn't go to a Power 5? They didn't have the option of so-called elevating. Now, at that time, I don't think it was a thought for them because they were better than what were the now today Power 5. The talent was in our backyard. And we weren't going to the Alabamas, the Auburns, because those doors had not been open to us. So I think at that time, it's a little bit unfair in ways to say that those guys stayed, but those guys didn't have an option. There was nowhere for them to go. So they weren't faced with the same set of questions that a Coach Prime is faced with, or these other black coaches that are at HBCUs that see a pathway. Because most people, when you go into a job and profession, obviously you want to love it, number one. But you are in it to take care of your family, number two. And this is one of the biggest, I think, issues that we deal with within our community is that when we want to see upward financial mobility, we don't see it coming from us. We feel like in most cases, we see that we have to go and join someone else. And we have to step outside of the community and work for other institutions that don't necessarily reflect our background in order to get the financial success that we, want to have. Now, I think a lot of times we have the best intentions, but we are all realistic people and understand that once a person makes that switch over and goes, let's say, comes out of the HBCU and goes to corporate America, the thought process is, once I get to a certain point, let me turn around and help out more people that look like me.
It's a responsibility.
Graduating
from an HBCU, it's like you supposed to.
That is a big difference, because one thing that I've learned, and one thing that I'm glad that I got it personally, but I feel like a lot of people who went to PWIs missed it. Is that what he said? That obligation. That duty to wanting to turn around and give back. My sister went to Tuskegee University, and I've noticed between her friends and peers that went to Tuskegee, they have a love for that university that's unlike anything that I've seen. But I've noticed it at a lot of other places: your Howards, your Hamptons, your Miles, your Alabama State. Like, there's a pride. I have zero pride in UAB. I have no desire to go back to anything that UAB had. I utilize UAB as a stepping stone to have an opportunity to play football and to get a college degree. There's nothing else that I look to them for. But also, there's nothing else that they provided. I think all too often, especially as athletes, in our community, we looked at it. For me, athletics was a way out, so to speak. It was a way to get a free education. And at that time, that felt like the best direction to go, to put myself in the best position to have a pathway forward. Because at that time when I'm coming out, you didn't see the number of athletes going to the NFL and NBA from the HBCUs. So I think that created a situation where I feel like our parents did a great job, and they were given a leg up, and they had the opportunity to take themselves and go to college. But I feel like in ways we failed, and they failed, because we're really the first generation of what I call having the ability to be selfish within our community. And we'll be back right there in a minute.
even if you did not go to the same HBCU, there's a community of understanding and a camaraderie that you have to build upon each other. So as you go out and face the world, and I'm interviewing you, and I see you went to HBCU, and everybody else went to PWI, I'm looking out for the HBCU every time. Because we know that from the world's view that our degree don't hold as much weight as a PWI school does. And so every opportunity is an obligation to, when you meet your HBCU brother or sister, that you are there to assist them, help them, uplift them, so that we can have forward movement as a people. And when Dion, when he came and left, it was like, because he kind of preyed on our heartstrings a little bit, because he's like, I'm here to change the culture of HBCU. I saw this going a lot differently, I believe, and I hate that it took Skip Bayless to say it over Shannon to say it, is that, okay, come in, you put a few years in, they asked him if he would play a power school, he's like, I'm not going to do that to my boys. I'm not going to have them getting hurt. I'm not going to put them in a precarious situation where they can't be successful yet. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, he really going to build. Let's give us a few years. You get a #1 recruit to come in. That's all it takes. You get one come in, the next one come in, the next one come in, and then now you're able to go down the street and play Mississippi State or play Ole Miss, and you're not there just to get a bag. Because when HBCUs play, when Alabama State plays Auburn, it's for a bag. Right. We ain't there to win no game. I don't care what nobody. We not there to win no game. We're there for the bag and the exposure, and that's the biggest part. Is that he had a. And the thing about Dion is so polarizing, and why it's disappointing, because I don't think nobody else during this time, because you got Eddie George that's at is Middle Tennessee.
Tennessee State.
Tennessee State, excuse me. You and even Coach Eddie Robinson, who played for the Titans for a little bit, it's like you got those guys, but they ain't Dion Primetime Sanders. Right. He don't have the resources or the reach that he has. And by showing the world that he could flip recruits and having the social media following, like, I started following JSU just because he was the coach. Because I was loving everything that he was instilling in the guys. So like, this is what I'm talking about. This is what we need. Everybody else needs to take note. Now, there's behind closed doors, there's a lot of other things that said and what went wrong, and I get that, but that's part of a bigger problem. But my expectations for him at first was that he was going to change the culture, but then he did the interview and said, I would have to entertain a Power 5 school if they wanted to interview me. That's the first time I was like, okay, he might not stay. Yeah. And the reality is that as a culture, like, it's not that we saying that you should be in long suffering and you need to stay at HBCUs forever, but the reality is that that's what I assume, because you said out your mouth. I'm not going to assume that you're going to be here to change the culture if this is not something that you said. But he sold us on that dream, and I think that's why so many people are so upset or disappointed at this point in time by him leaving. But I think he was fighting two battles. He was fighting, one, he didn't know what he was getting into. But then two is that he's fighting a battle for black coaches, because black coaches don't get the same opportunities, right? And so just like we looked out for him, because he wasn't going to get a head coaching job at a Power 5 school right off the bat. Because what's his resume? He coached Little League for years, he coached high school for years. That's typically not enough. But then he's getting an opportunity with our community, because that's what we do. We uplift one another, right? And so now that he's moved on, we're like, I know his legacy is strong if JSU continues to be successful. But when you take 10 players off the team to hit the transfer portal, he come with the bag. When you take 10 other players, your best players, to go to a PWI school, we know you was there for the upliftment of your career, and we understand that you're trying to give black coaches a better name, and that is a good forward move for them. But we have to stop worrying about a certain demographic of us and start focus on all of us as a whole and how we can move forward.
As you can see, welcome back to Closing the Gap. We jump right into it, picking up where we left off, and those are all great points. And you know, one thing that's unique to being black is that I always tell guys when I have, financial talks, and, I'm talking to a lot of, just say, successful guys making money, is that, unfortunately, you can't be 100% capitalist and be for the African American community. And the reason why I say this, we all know, as you become more successful, you start making more money, the higher you go on that mountain, the wider it gets. And at some point, you get to a destination, and you have to make a decision. Because if you put money first, because we don't own anything at the top. If we continue to make decisions that are strictly in the best interest of us financially, and my financial success right now today is going to be the detriment to my community. And that's why I'm not a big proponent of diversity and inclusion. It's because basically what they're saying is those white-owned companies are pulling what they feel is the best and brightest talent out of our universities, and even us that are attending their institutions, and bringing us into their companies to continue to grow, build, and uplift their companies. Well, those are the individuals that we need to grow, start, and build companies within our own community. So we can have something. So I'm a big proponent. I was telling one of my friends the other day, I said, look, I made a decision that I have to be comfortable with a certain level of sacrifice today. So hopefully my kids and my kids' kids can be better tomorrow. And when I talked on in the last segment, I touched on it a little bit, and I said, I used to tell my dad, I said, y'all did a great job starting, but y'all messed up a little bit. Because our parents, my parents, like I said, your parents, were able to go and have an education. You know, our parents both graduated Alabama State University, went on to have good careers. My mom has a master's from Alabama A&M. My dad got his master's actually from Alabama State as well. So they were able to go on and have some success individually. But sometimes I feel like they gave us too much. And I can see and understand it now because I have kids. And we fight that, trying to give our kids everything that we didn't have, but also at the same time trying to remember to give them what we did. And I think some of that's lost in every generation, because we can see, I look at my sons like, man, they so spoiled. You know, but I was spoiled. You know, and it gets worse and worse. It just, because our situations are changing, the way we look at things is changing. And unfortunately for a lot of guys that grew up in, especially in, I say my era, from an athletic perspective, in order to get what we feel like was the biggest shot, we feel like we had to go to a PWI. Unfortunately, the recruiting usually happened, and the head coach at that time was usually someone that didn't look like us. So that stereotype is imprinted. You gotta think, Deion played for a great coach in Bobby Bowden. And because of his skill and his talent, he was given an opportunity. He was able to move forward in a way that most of us are not able to move forward, because most of us didn't have his skill and talent. So our skills and talent gives us opportunities to move forward in ways that the greater your skill and talent, the less your color matters. And the best of us from a skill and talent perspective get accepted. And we get to move in a way where it almost feels like your color doesn't matter. Y'all remember OJ said, I'm not black, I'm OJ. Because his skill and talent had gained him access into a world where most of us couldn't move and operate. And if you notice, a lot of athletes, you see the situation with Jerry Jones. The picture comes out. He was, of course, at a racist event, you know, he was a 14-year-old child. And who knows what he was doing? We know what he was doing more than likely. We can, we have intuition that says what side he was standing on. But you see guys that, because they received the check and he took care of them financially and supposedly gave them an opportunity to put them in a better situation for what they perceive as a better life, they have a sense of loyalty to them. So I think part of our problem is that a lot of our athletes and entertainers don't know the difference between someone giving them an opportunity and tolerating them versus actually accepting them. You know, we all have a need to be, we all want to be accepted. And we feel like a lot of times we've confused that, especially a lot of our athletes, because we notice, who do our athletes and entertainers turn to for advice? You know, we get to a certain point and the agent, the financial advisor, the accountant, the attorney, but you look at it, their high school coach, their head coach, usually those were white guys. So that trust is starting to be developed in a way where, because we didn't hold those positions, they have been, subliminally put in their mind like, okay, this is who we trust. And especially if you make it to the NFL, the general manager is usually who? The head coach is usually who? The owner is definitely the guy who couldn't check is who. So that trust has been built. So we take someone providing us with financial reward and financial gain as a good person, and it's not mutually the same.
It's not as being one, and we've said this before, is that we don't put a premium on ourselves as a culture. Like the value, like seeing us as a valuable resources, we have to go through great lengths to prove that we're a reputable resource that someone else can come to, or that we can lean on each other. Usually we always go to their community to seek out what we deem as a better level of the same type of resource, which is something that we deal with a lot in our industry and what we do, honestly.
And to that, with integrating into the community and having to be there, and to your point about diversity and inclusion, I think that while I do agree with you to an extent, I think the base though that we have to let our people know is that when they come and pull you out, don't forget where they pulled you from and what was poured into you that attracted them to come and pull you out. Because it's no different than whether it's my intellectual talent or it's my physical ability, right? Because, okay, just like you said, Coach Prime's physical ability allowed him, Bobby Bowden, to come and get him and bring him to Florida State, right? And then also with the diversity inclusion, because of my intellectual ability, you come and pull me out of the community. So I think we do need people in those places, but we need them to remember who they are and remember the community, right? So to an extent, right, like with Coach Prime, what we said, all right, he's taking, which can be looked at two different ways. He's grabbed some of the good black coaches that were head coaches at HBCUs, and he's taking them with him to Colorado. To an extent, that's a good thing, right? Now he's bringing them up, and he's showing that, okay, I'll be a pipeline for these coaches that really know how to coach, but I see the struggle that they have. But then alternatively, you take what Coach Buddy Pugh at South Carolina State said last year when they beat Jackson State in that Celebration Bowl, and they were asking him about the recruits and do you want 5 stars, and he was like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here, like Coach Prime, that's fine what he's doing, but I'm here to take these kids in this South Carolina community and help them realize what they have in them to become greater. And so he's one of those types of coaches that was making that type of sacrifice, and he's been putting guys in the NFL all the time. I mean, Leonard at Indianapolis Colts, one of the top linebackers in the league currently, right? Absolutely. You know, came from South Carolina State. So we just need to remember who we are, no matter where we are. Absolutely.
And you know, and it's crazy, and kind of what I was alluding to in a way where I feel like every generation we've had a little bit lost is that foundation of where we come from. It seems like it's continuously being diluted. So, you know, my parents, they come from it. They witnessed the struggle because that was their era. So they poured into us differently. And because of my generation's level of financial success and us feeling more accepted and tolerated, I don't feel like we poured into our kids the exact same way. So while I feel like, we're doing better individually, and it's crazy because I had this, you know, almost, I won't say argument, but we have this conversation, you know, continuously with one of my good friends, and he went to PWI as well. He works in corporate America, and I'm like, I said, man, we got to have our own. And he was like, well, if I'm being successful and, you know, you're making money and I'm making money, and I think this is the issue where we come back to Coach Prime. If the difference between Coach Prime and the coach from South Carolina State is, like I say, one focused on purpose, and the other is more so focused on money. So at the end of the day, if Coach Prime wasn't trying to uplift from himself from a financial perspective, he can uplift coaches where he is. He's bringing coaches to Jackson State currently. But the pay is not commensurate to what he feels like he deserves and the people around him deserve. So I understand from a financial perspective, wanting to put people in a better position, and I understand because we all got to eat. But until our community puts purpose first and money second, we're going to always be behind. Be back in a minute. Welcome to Hamilton Wealth Advisors, where our goal is to change the financial landscape of the African American community by providing the best of the best in financial professionals to help close the gap on financial wellness, wealth creation, and wealth transference. We're continuing to expand and grow our reach and add qualified advisors to our team. Help us to teach our community how to create generational wealth. We're looking for passionate, selfless, and professional advisors that pride themselves in the core beliefs that education plus expertise leads to proper execution. So if you think this opportunity may be for you, ask yourself this question: what is your why? And if the answer is you want to be a professional, successful advisor that makes a positive impact in the lives of all you come into contact with, contact us about joining our team today. As we look to move forward, continue to be a blessing to those who would never come into contact with by creating a successful financial plan today.
With the coaching thing, right, to what you just closed out on was, all right, he could stay there, he could have stayed there at the school, brought in coaches and funneled the coaches up. You see what I'm saying? And be the pipeline, you know. But now he's choosing to do it a different way. And I think to what you were saying about purpose, I think purpose, I would say it this way. His purpose is to prove that I can coach in the Power 5. Now that's just what I think.
Yeah, no,
is that he wants to prove that
he's a legitimate coach.
Yeah, that I'm a legitimate coach. That's my purpose. Whereas like Buddy Pugh at South Carolina State said, basically was like, I know I can coach.
Yeah.
But my purpose is to take this group of guys and coach them up to a new level. So I'm not trying to get the guy that has the all-world talent. I'm trying to take the guy that has the potential and pull the talent out of him to make him be greater than who he thinks he really is.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy? Something came to me. I was thinking, it says, experience dictates what we see as our purpose. Coach Prime experiences as an athlete, is his experiences as a black man have shaped what he feel like his purpose should be. I'm guaranteeing that coach at South Carolina State has had different experiences that shaped him in a way to have a different purpose.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the changes and the conflict arises, especially within our community. I think those of us who have went to an HBCU have had certain experiences that shaped our purpose versus those of us who went to PWIs have had these experiences that have shaped our purpose. So I think, that's why I say there's necessarily not a right and a wrong per se.
Sure.
There's a preference as to what we would like to happen and what we would like to see. But I'm, fortunate enough where I went to a PWI. I really have an HBCU background because of my family. And then as a financial advisor, I've worked directly in close proximity to our HBCUs. So I've seen the struggle. So, and I have a different heart because of my personal passion and purpose is to teach my community how to create generational wealth. So I take that extremely personal. So when I hear one of my friends say, I'm moving up the corporate ladder and I'm going to continue to build here, and I can just take that money and I can donate back to some good causes. And I told him, I said, man, the problem is you donate money back to the community is great, but the problem is they don't see us. They don't see me and you. They see an athlete here or there, but they don't see, like, I was fortunate enough to see solid, well-respected black men growing up. I pledged, Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, for one, because of my father. I had to throw that in there. I had to throw it in there.
There was no reason to say it.
But it was because of my father and his friends. But it was because of what they stood for as men. I saw them being men in the community. And I always had a high level of respect for, of course, the brothers that'll make us Alpha and of course Alpha Alpha, because I saw the community work. Someone throw y'all shade of plug in there too. But I remember going to of course they would always have the MLK breakfast in Montgomery, because of course he was at Dexter Avenue, so I would go, and I was able to. I've been to the church before. I just go to the breakfast they used to have, and they actually still have the MLK breakfast now in Montgomery. I've been to Omega functions, have good friends that are Omega. So for me, because I witnessed it as a kid growing up, the fraternities played a different role. I wasn't looking to pledge in college to go to a party or to feel like I need to be accepted by a group of people. It was more so about the service that I saw those men providing in the community, in the representation of what they stood for. So I think that's a lot of times what is lost, and I see that even as a big difference from guys they pledged at PWI versus guys that pledged at HBCUs. It's just a difference of in the way they see the legacy and the standard that's set. Much like Eddie Robinson said, he's standing on the shoulders of the SWAC greats. You could hear the pride in his voice when he said that.
True.
There is no kid or no guy that went to a PWI that I feel like can say that. Because you can look at all the so-called great coaches, and I'm very careful to separate the coach from the man. Because one thing that I've learned is just because you're good at a particular, job or in a particular career field, don't mean that you're a man of great character. We've seen that on numerous occasions where these guys we put on pedestals, and I have friends that played for Auburn that was in college when I was in college, them playing for Tommy Tuberville. And I see them guys now. I said, well, what you think about Coach now? How you feel about Coach now? Or these guys that, played for Bobby Petrino. These guys that play for all these different coaches, Hugh Freeze, that's at Auburn now. I mean, the things that they've done, I'm like, is that a great man of character there? Or was he just a successful and intelligent football coach? Or we can go back to our own Bill Clark. He that was at UAB. I didn't go to a UAB game simply because of who I saw him be as a man. That didn't mean that he wasn't a good football coach. That didn't mean that he couldn't coach a football team. But for me, your character and who you are as a man supersedes what you do. So there's a reason why I had an issue with black guys that said I'm a Trump supporter. You can be Republican, that's fine, because that's a viewpoint. That's a give and take based on actual fundamental values and the way you think things need to be ran. But when you say you support him, that's a different conversation. Me, that's a character flaw. I can't support a man that says certain things about certain people and is disrespectful in that way. So I think we have to do a better job in our community, especially in too much is put on our athletes and entertainers because we look to them to be social justice champions and warriors, and they're not that. Deion doesn't have any formal education from the standpoint of really understanding the plight and struggle of us because he's been so busy being Deion.
Absolutely.
And it's not fair.
It isn't, and and when you said it earlier about his experience shaping him, and I think his purpose is his focus on his coaching career. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And one thing about us as a community, we don't care what you've done. We gonna tell you about yourself if the opportunity comes available to us to say something.
And love you the same.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're banking on entertainers and coaches, but even from an administration standpoint of these universities, are we getting the best financial CFOs to be running these universities? Are we getting are these deans out making connections in the community or within the corporate world to make sure that their students have the best opportunities, that they're researching and finding out what degrees are going to have more weight, what do our students need to learn to be able to be gainfully employees or to start their own businesses. So it can't just be about what the coaches is doing. It's got to be more so about what everybody, we want excellence across the board. So it can't just fall on his shoulders. And I know there were some things talked about how Deion's salary and how he had to come out of pocket for a lot of things to make sure that program was successful. And my biggest gripe is that his influence seemed like it wasn't commuting as it relates to monetary support. Because if I see Rick Ross and I see everybody else on the sideline, I'm like, okay, what they giving to the program? What they giving to the university?
Well, that leads to a bigger issue there because we're a part of with you, but we ain't gonna spend no money with you.
Right.
So, and I think, but one of the things you touched on, and one of the issues that we have, fundamentally in our community, because we've been so vastly underfunded in so many different ways. We've been underfunded from an HBCU standpoint directly from the federal government and local governments. We as people have been underfunded because we've been taken advantage of from just a housing loan perspective that's created a huge wealth gap. From a systematic oppression standpoint, when you look at what welfare did to the African American family and the separation of taking men out of their homes in order to receive welfare benefits. So unfortunately, fundamentally, all of our issues really come back down to money. And you talk about those universities being able to go out and get the top talent. Well, if Alabama State and Miles are competing against Apple and Google and Microsoft and all these big Fortune 500 companies for the best of the best, the benefits package here is going to be different than benefits package here. So this is why I kind of go back to the statement I made earlier, is that we have to put purpose in front of profit. And until our community is willing to make a sacrifice. So we were fortunate that our parents made sacrifices during the civil rights movement, and their parents made sacrifices to give us the freedom that we have today to be able to have the opportunity to move the way we can. But when is our generation going to make a sacrifice? We were given the opportunity and the benefit to run our own race. And all of us now are running our own independent races. And it's a race to the most money we can possibly make. But along that way, there's been separation from my fellow man. So we're not actually pouring into each other in the same way. So this is why I'm real big on closing the wealth gap being about trust, not being about money. Because if I trust my brother, I can work with my brother. One of those things you say, well, the problems that we have, that Dion may have with, just say, the institution. Obviously, you can see there was a lack of trust there. When people donate money to either churches or HBCUs, the first thing that a person says as a gripe or as a reason as to why not to do it is, I don't trust what they're going to do with my money when I give it to them. Yeah. Well, guess what? It's not your responsibility individually to worry about what they're going to do with the money. It's your responsibility to give it. It's my responsibility to give my tithe, not worry about what the church is going to do with my tithe. Now, I can become more active within my church or within that university to be a conduit of change, or hopefully open some eyes and start the conversation as to what we should be doing. But we have to give it first. See, a lot of us, we like to give our voice, but we ain't giving no money. We want to tell you what to do.
Absolutely.
What I like to do anything.
But being that conduit of change is something we need to do across the board. It's funny that you said, because it's such a good point that, like, if you have a small business, and let's say it's a food restaurant, and I work for the FDA or something like that, and I come in to support your business because I'm very purposeful about supporting a black business, and I see things that are wrong within your business. As a business owner, and what we don't do as a community, we don't like when we're held accountable to a certain degree, because I've attained a certain level of success, and so you can't tell me nothing about how to run my business. But if I've gone through the trouble of being an expert in this field, and I see how you can improve, we as a culture, as a people, have to be able to take that criticism and be okay with improving, because it's for our betterment. And I see that that's an issue a lot of times with black-owned businesses or black-run institutions, is that we don't like for nobody on the outside tell us what we doing right or wrong on the inside.
Right or wrong, part of where I feel like where that comes from is the lack of men in the home nowadays. If you're not taught and you don't learn, first place I learned constructive criticism at home. Was my dad telling me what I wasn't doing and him correcting me and telling me what I needed to do in order to get what I wanted out of life. He told me straight up, I said, look, man, you want a basketball or football scholarship? You got to work harder than what you work. You got to do more. You got to put in extra time. If you're not going to do that, you're not going to get this. But that was the constructive criticism when he walked into a gym and he saw me not putting in the kind of effort he knew it was going to take for me to get where I said I wanted to go. So unfortunately, we have a lot of issues that are bigger than we can tackle, in really almost one lifetime. But it's going to take a committed effort in order for us to do that, but we have to start now. I always be the change that you want to see. One thing I have a huge problem with in our community now is that too many people got a voice.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of social media because everybody got a voice, and we really don't understand and have a level of discernment as to who to listen to anymore. I hate the fact that when there's an issue or when a situation happened with Dion, right, wrong, and indifferent, we got to stop arguing in front of company.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to stop doing that.
Absolutely.
Because they use that information against us. They'll say, well, how can we support you and you don't support you?
Y'all don't rock with each
They
other.
hold that against us. So we got to do a better job of, hey man, let's take it back to the barbershop. You know, it's okay for us to argue amongst each other, to have those conversations, because we need to have them.
Right, true.
But let's hash it out in a place where it's behind closed doors. We never see them argue in public. And I'm talking about other races. We never see them argue in public the way they see us argue in public. You know, they may make a comment here or there, but we don't see them having these same types of important conversations that we're having. We literally have been talking about Dion for the last week as to right, wrong, indifferent. He got character flaws. He has a moral compass issue. He's choosing money over people. We're having all these conversations in front of company. When it used to be, you know what? There's a time and place for everything, and I think we need to do a better job with time and place. See you in a minute.
You know, with us dealing with this person had a problem with this person. You know, I would say we don't label it as domestic violence, but essentially it is, because where they may not be cousins, brothers, or sisters, but it's domestic because they are people that deal with each other on a daily basis, and so it gets problematic there, and that's why, like you said, we have to try to keep things in house in a sense, try to manage ourselves better.
I think the worst of it, I mean, as we segue a little bit, is that how we see, you know, figures like Shaquille O'Neal and like Charles Barkley, how they respond to a Kyrie Irving, and how it almost seems like there's a supreme lack of ignorance or a lack of intelligence to not understand what Kyrie is really saying and his approach. And then when you asked about it, even LeBron, I was disappointed. He kind of harped on him, but then he came back later and tried to clean up, even with the whole Jerry Jones situation. You know, why y'all not asking me questions like, you know, like y'all were about Kyrie or whatnot. I was like, yeah, I appreciate it. We need to hear that from you, but now it's kind of like, for me, it's like it's a little bit too late for you to say it, because reality is that since when, and goes back to the money, is that because it's that fear of losing that resource, right? It's like you can't not say anything. They put us in situations where we have to speak and talk bad about each other.
I think part of it is when we go back to the way people react, it goes back to their experiences. You know, we've talked about successful prominent guys. You talk about whether it's Dion, whether it's Shaq, whether it's Charles Barkley. Their level of success individually as athletes has afforded them access to opportunities and access to situations that are not commonly available to us. They're treated differently because they've been a profitable entity since they've been known by the other community. So because of that, like I said, unfortunately in our community, as long as we're profitable, we're acceptable. You know, and we have to understand the difference between acceptance and tolerance, and the way people treat us. So, you know, we have to go back to our level of experiences kind of shape, you know, the way we see things. Like I say, Shaq and Barkley's and Dion's, you know, experience in life shape the way they react. If you have a different set of experiences, you probably react a little bit differently, much like we talked about Dion versus the coach at South Carolina State. Passion versus profit. And then who's right or who's wrong, that's up for debate for another day. But, you know, one thing that you touched on earlier, Jeff, and I think it doesn't get touched on enough, is that, and why the playing field is not equal, and why we, you know, part of the reason why we do this podcast is about closing the gap. The wealth gap American it's not just, you know, financial, it's the way the outside communities view us. And why did Dion have to go through the hoops that he had to go through, supposedly, to get a head coaching job, when you don't see people coming from other communities having to jump through those same hoops? So it said, well, why does Dion have to go get head coaching experience to coach at the college level, but Jeff Saturday can be on TV and go straight to the Indianapolis Colts.
Absolutely.
So for them to say, and they use those things against that, well, you have to do these things, you have to take these steps in order to qualify for this job. No. If I'm the owner of a company, I can hire whoever I want to hire. You just got to deal with it. This is why I always go back to my friend. I say, man, we have to have more ownership. Because until you can dictate your opportunities in your own community, you can't dictate your success. We're always in a situation where we're waiting for them to give us an opportunity to uplift ourselves. And this is, my personal frustration with Deion. Say, look, you could have been a conduit of change to help to elevate us to a point where we don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
That's the frustrating part. But I think, obviously, Deion didn't have that vision because I'm 100% sure, 99% sure that he really does not understand the plight of the HBCUs. I truly believe that he doesn't
got
really
a little
know.
snapshot recently.
He had a snapshot because he got a chance to see behind the scenes
and get on
the financial conditions. No. He saw behind the scenes the financial conditions and the resources that our HBCUs had to deal with. So that gave him a snapshot, but that's something you got to be prepared for. And if you didn't come in understanding that from the beginning, and all of a sudden you get smacked in the mouth with that, you start to question. And all of a sudden, that purpose as to why I came in the beginning, as you got on with that, when he started doing those interviews, all of a sudden, I got to entertain what I wasn't entertaining originally because I didn't really understand. He's thinking, well, I'm going to a college university. They're going to have some money and some resources. I can just come in and put my Deion magic on it, and we can take this thing to the next level. Then he get in and realize that he's literally practicing on is not even as good as some high school fields. He doesn't have any facilities and resources, and all of a sudden, that passion and purpose may shift, or that timeline speeds up. So, that's part of it. But that's why we always go back to, we have to start making a conscientious effort to work with each other, build up each other, and uplift each other. Until we really start to do that on a conscious level, and not just during Black History Month. Let's support a black business. I'm like, no. Well, how's a black business going to stay in business the rest of the year? Because you support them in February, but they got to make it to the next February.
Absolutely.
That's why I used to like Tom Joyner used to do the Black 365, and even push McDonald's toward being the sponsor of his Black 365 because, Scripture tells us in Hosea, it says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. And all of this goes to what level, like you said earlier about your level of experience, essentially says what level of knowledge do you have about a situation, right? So Coach Prime comes into Jackson State with a low level of knowledge about what he's about to face. Now we can only hope that now that he has seen it firsthand, that even though your goal was never to be at an HBCU, and that's the thing that for us we have to accept is that had one of the Power 5 schools went on gave him what he wanted from the first place, he would have never even been at JSU, right? So that's one side of it, but then also as a people, the thing that I can respect about it is that he accepted coming, because you got to realize that when you look like us, even with no head coaching experience, Coach, we'll trust you.
Yeah.
I'm about to say trust Eddie Robinson.
Yeah, trust Eddie Robinson. Like they say, hey, Eddie Robinson, you came from here. You don't have any head coaching experience. We'll trust you.
Yeah.
Coach Prime, you hadn't had any college head coaching experience and in recruiting, but we'll trust you. And that's even the flip side of how I listened to Shannon Sharp's response about, hey, if I wasn't a prop, if I had had the grades, I would have went to a Power 5. I never wanted to go to a HBCU. Well, okay, that's fine from your perspective, but the difference is the HBCU exists because we trust each other. We're a place for one another, that whether you are a Travis Hunter, 5-star, one of the greatest to do it, or whether you're a Coach Deion, one of the greatest to ever play, or if you're a no-star guy, we exist to help you become who you desire to be and help bring, or not even who you desire to be. We want to stir up what's inside of you to help you discover who you can be many times. And as a result, you know, the way that I would sell it with Shannon Sharp is, even though he said what he said, I'll tell people, well, even though he said what he said, look at where he is. Look at what the HBCU produced. Right? He's one of the top guys in television right now. He didn't get that from where he wanted to go. And not saying he would not have. Possible. But look at how he got there.
Look at the results.
Yeah, look at the results that we have now.
Yeah, and I think those are things that we have to take into consideration. And part of it is in the back of our mind, which is, you know, I think in the back of all of our minds to a certain extent, especially those, after seeing what has happened to our other brothers on the other side. So Deion saying, okay, well, Deion, you can be here today, and they love you today. Colorado State is, University of Colorado is welcoming you today, but remember how they did Kyrie, and to a lesser extent Kanye, and this is where you could be tomorrow. And I wanted him to stay personally because of the impact I know he could have made, you know, with his HBCUs and the love I know he would have received from us. But
forever, eternally.
It's a different kind of love. It's a different kind of love that he got from us, most definitely. But I always want us to remember and say, look, we love you forever. They love you for a little while. They love you while you're profitable.
Listen, because you get there and don't win, it's going to be a slap in the face not only to our community, but I mean, obviously to himself. But I take all that to just roll it back into what we do. Like, we made some sacrifices. You specifically have made some sacrifices because there's been many of opportunities where you could have gone to larger firms and say, you know what, I'm not going to do Hamilton Wealth Advisor no more. I'm going to focus on me and my career. And if you hadn't done that, you wouldn't have had as much impact as you've had, not only on me, but the rest of the community in which we serve. And I think it's important that to your point about ownership is that we need to get some nepotism back. We need to be able to provide more, and the only way that we can provide more is by having that level of ownership. Is that Hamilton Wealth Advisors as a company, we're not going nowhere. We have already made the conscious decision that we're going to sacrifice and build organically from the ground up. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. You know, we may not even see the success that we want in our lifetime, but we're trying to lay the foundation for the change that we do want to see within our communities. And I think that if we can adopt that in all the other fields and then recognize that within one another and have value for one another in that and continue to support one another, that's the only way that we can have synergy as a community and actually grow.
Yeah, like, I mean, I got to go back to what my boy Sway told Kanye from the beginning. You know, Kanye told Sway he ain't had the answers. When it turned out, Sway had the answer. And the answer was, build it yourself. It may take longer. The process may be slower. It may be more painstaking. But at the end of the day, you own it 100% and you can never be canceled. Because if we're supporting you, we're never going to cancel you. But if you leave us and go to them and you make the decision to say conscientiously that I believe that working with them is better than working with you, we will cancel you. Now, the great thing about black people is that we are the most forgiving people on the face of the earth. So Kanye is not the end all be all. If he came back humbly, we would accept him back.
I think it's just like what Jeff said earlier about when you do something else, like, we're going to painfully tell you about yourself. You know, we still love you. But we're going to tell you about yourself. We're going to confront you. Like, you it's not just going to be oh, I'm coming back, and we're gonna tell you like, oh yeah, you thought it was gonna be all right over there, right? Like we're gonna tell you about it, but then and not to be rude, but it's just to let you know that hey, we tried to tell you you shouldn't have left anyway.
The grass ain't always green.
And then honestly, on the negative side of that is that how many times have big time, you know, whoever artists, athletes come back home. And somebody still remind them, hey, I know you. you still, I know where you from. I know how you came up. So it ain't no different in the professional world. We'll still hold each other accountable. And I think I don't really see it among other communities. I can't speak to or not, but and for the most part, we understand that toughness that we build within ourselves is necessary. Like, you know, again, our experiences, to your point, has shaped us where we can't afford to do the same things as other communities do. And and that's why it's so much more important that we work together and stick together. You know, we look at, you know, the Jewish community and then ADL, they got a whole infrastructure. They got a whole infrastructure for how they operate, how they move. Hey, yeah, we're gonna support this business. Oh yes, it's poor quality, but we're still gonna support that business because they are one of us. And if we can adopt some of those things and start trying to create some systems that benefit us and become truly independent and not need other communities to help uplift us.
Yeah. And I think, and to your point, Jeff, that's something that Wilbert and I talking about recently. You know, I've been sharing with him some ideas that I had financially and things that I want to do, you know, based on building an infrastructure, building a foundation. And that's even how we ended up saying, hey man, we need to shoot another episode before the year closes out, because we were talking about, okay, what direction, you know, we're going to go into 2023. And so, you know, we want everybody to make sure they pay attention, because going into next year, you know, we're gonna do some in-house things and begin to lay some more foundations for the people to build off of. You know, we're not gonna be able to put everything on the podcast. So, you know, I want to encourage everybody, man, come by the barbershop. You know, hey, come see Hamilton in the office and sit down and talk about some financial wealth building, because like you said, we can't talk about everything outside, because everybody can't understand, you know what I'm saying, what you're saying when you just put it all out there. And a lot of things we need to have a sit down, and so there's nothing like grabbing a good meal, sitting down at the table together, you know, and being able to reason with each other. So I look forward to what's in store for 2023, you know, with Hamilton and Jeff and Hamilton Wealth Advisors, all of this, man. Yes, sir. It's gonna be great.
Well, as you can see, we all about closing the gap, and we've had I've had a blessed and wonderful day today, man. We got into a lot of different topics. We've covered a lot of different information, but at the end of the day, everything that we're saying is all based on trying to help close the wealth gap in the African American community. It's all about educating, uplifting, enriching, and then that leads to execution. Because, like I said, we can talk all day under the sun, but at some point in time, we got to put pen to paper, we got to put foot to grass, and we got to work and we got to execute. So until we actually do what we say and not just talk about what we gonna do, we will stay in the same place. Everybody has a solution for what they think we should do to get better. But I look for the people that are actually doing it. You know, the brothers I got sitting next to me today are actually doers. I see what Brother Richardson has done. I see what, you know, Mr. Lamar does on a consistent day-to-day basis. So, you know, it's all about helping people. And as long as you take care of people, people take care of you. And we as a community have to do a better job of taking care of one another. You know, like I say, talk about those things that have somehow from generation to generation gotten, you know, started to lack more and more, is that community, that us taking care of each other. It used to be back in the day, if my church member saw me acting up, she could correct me in public if my mom and dad wasn't there. Or the lady down the street, she said, well, I know your mom and dad. They could catch you out and straighten you up. You know, they can give you a little liquor. They can do what they need to do to get you in line. And there was a level of respect there. And we not saying that we can go back to that, but we have to have a greater sense of community and a greater sense of being there for one another and knowing that we have each other's interests, best interests at heart. A lot of times we got each other's interests at heart, but it's in a nosy way because of social media nowadays. And everybody they want to know what you're doing just to be nosy, but nobody's really paying attention to how can I help this person? How can I help that person? How can I be a blessing, you know, to those of us, you know, in our community? So I just, you know, implore us to, you know, look beyond yourself. Like I say, Rome wasn't built in a day. We can't change the world overnight. But if we start with ourselves and each person just says, you know what, I want to be a blessing to somebody else that I come into contact with. I want to pour into somebody that may not have my last name. I want to give back or do more, because we all live in excess today. I mean, we all have more than enough. We all could miss a meal, you know, and donate that meal to somebody else. So, you know, I just implore people to look inside themselves, you know, figure out where you want to be, because I truly want to see our community grow, thrive, and change. And the only way for us to do that is to take a self-accountability. You know, I always tell December is my planning month. I take the month of December and I look in the mirror. It's self-reflection. We got to be willing to take constructive criticism from those that are close to us and those that are around us. Why I try to keep good brothers around me. You know, brother can pour into me from time to time, and you know, and Mr. Lamar can pour into me, because every now and then I need to be checked. I need to reflect, and it's okay to ask for help. You'll hear me continuously say, seek professional help. That's in all areas of life. Don't be a jack of all trades and master of none. Do what you do to the best of your ability. The Bible says, a man skillful in his works will be placed before great men. So whatever it is that you're passionate about in your purpose, be skillful in that. But the areas that you're not, seek help.
Absolutely.
In everything you ask for, seek ye what? Righteousness?
That's right.
And all things will be added.
Added unto you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. See you next year.